She first touched the piano when she was just a little girl. The piano in her living room had been there for as long as she could remember. A big, dark wooden thing that her family mostly used as a place to keep photographs and little trinkets. But to her, it was a world of sound waiting to be discovered. Every time she pressed a key, even without knowing what notes were or what she was playing, the sounds made her heart leap. It was soft and sweet, sometimes high and ringing, other times low and heavy, and it made her feel like she could tell a story without saying a single word. Her fascination grew with every day. After school, instead of running outside to play with the other children, she would sneak into the living room and run her fingers over the keys. At first, she just hit keys randomly, making little melodies that only she understood. Sometimes her younger siblings would peek in and laugh at the strange noises, but she didn't mind. The piano felt like a friend that never judged her, that always listened. Her parents noticed her interest but didn't take it seriously. They thought it was cute, just a hobby, something to keep her busy while they focused on her studies and chores. They would encourage her to finish homework quickly so she could have her music time, but they rarely imagined she could actually become good at it. Friends at school didn't understand either. When she told them she wanted to play the piano, some of them rolled their eyes, saying she should spend her time on sports or games instead. They didn't mean to be cruel. They just didn't know what it meant to feel the music in your bones. Despite the lack of serious support, she kept going. She loved how the piano made her feel alive. When she played, all her worries disappeared. Even the arguments she sometimes had with her siblings or the boring days at school seemed far away when her fingers danced on the keys. She would imagine herself performing on a stage, with the lights on her, the audience silent, and the music filling the entire room. In her mind, she could see it all clearly, even if no one else believed it could happen. Her first lessons were simple. A neighbor offered to teach her, an older woman who had been a pianist herself. The lessons were short, just a few times a week, but they made a big difference. The neighbor taught her how to read the notes, how to position her fingers, how to listen carefully to each sound. It was hard at first, and she struggled to remember where the notes were and how to coordinate her hands. Sometimes she would get frustrated and want to give up, but something inside her kept pushing her forward. She wanted to make the piano sing, and that desire was stronger than her frustration. She started practicing every day, sometimes for hours, losing track of time as she worked on scales and simple songs. The first time she could play a song from beginning to end, she felt a rush of joy she had never felt before. It was a simple tune, a happy little melody, but to her, it felt like magic. She ran to her parents to show them, her eyes bright with excitement. They clapped politely, smiling, but she noticed that their smiles didn't carry the same awe she felt. They saw her accomplishment as small, but to her it was huge. Every note she played felt like a step toward something bigger. Her passion began to grow stronger as she explored more music. She listened to recordings of famous pianists on the old CD player and tried to copy their songs. At first, it was nearly impossible. Her fingers were small and clumsy, and the songs were fast and complicated. She made mistakes over and over, hitting the wrong notes, losing her place, and sometimes hitting keys so hard that it hurt her fingers. But each time she practiced, she improved a little. Each mistake taught her something new. She learned patience and persistence, the kind of dedication that could only come from truly loving what you do. Sometimes she would play in secret. She would wake up early before anyone else in the house or stay up late after everyone had gone to bed. In those quiet moments, the piano felt like it belonged only to her. The music she created was hers alone, a private world where she could express every feeling, every dream she had. Sometimes she played fast and lively tunes that made her want to dance around the room, and other times she played soft, slow melodies that made her feel like she was telling a story only she could tell. Each time, she felt more connected to the music and to herself. School continued, and so did the doubts of others. Some classmates whispered that the piano was boring, that she was wasting her time, that she should focus on something more practical. Even teachers sometimes treated it as a distraction from academics. She felt a sting when they laughed or shrugged, but she refused to let their words crush her spirit. Instead, she used it as motivation. Every comment, every teasing remark, made her want to prove them wrong. Not out of anger, but out of love for the piano and the joy it brought her. Her home life wasn't always supportive either, though it was full of small encouragements. Her parents still treated it like a hobby, and sometimes her siblings would bang on the furniture or shout across the room when she was practicing. But she learned to block out the noise. She learned to focus, to listen deeply to the sound she created, and to trust that her passion was real, even if no one else understood it. The turning point in these early years was a small recital at her school. It wasn't a big event, just a gathering in the auditorium with a few parents and teachers, but it was important to her. She practiced for weeks, perfecting a simple song, and on the day of the recital, she felt nervous and excited all at once. As she sat at the piano, her hands trembling slightly, she realized how much she had grown. She could play something real, something that could be heard and appreciated by others. The first notes rang out, clear and confident, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. She felt herself soaring on the music, and even though a few people whispered and chuckled, the feeling of accomplishment outweighed it all. After that day, her love for the piano became even stronger. She realized that it wasn't just a hobby. It was a part of who she was. She wanted to learn more, play more, and one day, maybe, share her music with a larger audience. Even though the road ahead seemed long and full of challenges, she was ready. Every note she played, every melody she imagined, became a step toward something greater, a dream that was hers and hers alone. She started writing little compositions, melodies that came from her heart rather than a book. Sometimes they were happy and playful, other times soft and thoughtful. She kept them in a notebook, a secret diary of music that only she could read. These compositions became a place to express feelings she couldn't put into words. Joy, sadness, hope, and longing all captured in the movement of her fingers. She began to understand that music had power, could tell a story, bring people together, and even change the way someone felt in an instant. And that thought excited her beyond measure. Her passion didn't go unnoticed by the few people who paid attention. The neighbor who taught her piano often complimented her dedication and skill. The support, small as it was, meant everything. She realized that even if most people didn't understand her love for the piano, the few who did could make a world of difference. And so she continued, day after day, sitting at the piano, exploring, creating, and dreaming. By the end of those early years, she was no longer just a little girl pressing keys randomly. She had become someone who understood the language of music, someone who could make the piano speak her thoughts and feelings. The spark of passion had grown into a small flame, bright and steady, lighting the path toward a dream that she knew she would follow no matter what others thought. She was ready to face the world, one note at a time, and the journey had only just begun as she grew older. Her love for the piano became stronger, but so did the challenges. It was not enough that she had to learn new songs or master difficult notes. The real struggle came from the people around her. Some classmates laughed at her dedication, calling her piano playing a silly hobby. When she shared that she wanted to perform in a recital, a few friends whispered behind her back, saying she was wasting her time. Even teachers sometimes seemed indifferent, seeing her music as a distraction from schoolwork. These small acts of ridicule stung, but they never extinguished her passion. Instead, they pushed her to work harder in secret, to practice longer hours, and to dream bigger. She found herself spending afternoons after school in the living room, fingers gliding over the keys while her mind escaped into the music. Her parents often walked by, noticing her absorbed expression but still treating it lightly, suggesting she balance it with homework and chores. She didn't mind. Music had become her world, a place where she could be herself without judgment. Each time she played a song correctly, mastering a tricky passage or finishing a long piece, a sense of accomplishment filled her. It was as if the piano acknowledged her effort and rewarded her in ways that others did not. One day, a school announcement mentioned a small talent show. Her heart leapt at the idea of performing, but doubts quickly followed. She remembered the teasing from classmates and the skeptical looks from teachers. What if they laughed at her again? What if she made a mistake and everyone thought her hobby was silly? Yet, she also felt a flicker of determination. This was her chance to show the world a piece of herself. She signed up, her hands trembling slightly as she filled out the registration form. There was a thrill in the possibility that her music could be heard beyond the walls of her home. Practicing for the talent show became a new mission. Every day, she worked on the song, paying attention to every note and every rhythm. Sometimes she would make mistakes over and over again, missing a note or hitting the wrong key, and frustration would threaten to overwhelm her. But she never gave up. She took breaks, shook out her hands, and then returned to the piano with renewed focus. Slowly, the song began to take shape, the notes flowing more naturally from her fingers. In those moments, she realized that persistence mattered more than perfection. She could improve, one attempt at a time, and each attempt brought her closer to the music she imagined. The closer the day of the talent show came, the more nervous she became. She watched as other students practiced their own acts, some performing confidently, others fumbling like her. The whispers of doubt from classmates lingered in her mind, but she kept telling herself that her music was worth it. She imagined the piano in her mind, the keys smooth under her fingers, the sound filling the auditorium, and the faces of people listening quietly. She pictured the surprise on the faces of those who had doubted her, the shift from teasing to admiration. It was a small dream, but it was hers, and it gave her courage. On the day of the talent show, the auditorium was filled with parents, teachers, and students. The lights were bright, and the chatter of the crowd created a nervous buzz in her stomach. She waited backstage, watching other performers, her heart beating fast. When it was finally her turn, she walked to the piano, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. The audience looked at her with curiosity, some skeptical, some supportive. She took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. At first, she was nervous, her hands trembling slightly. But as the notes filled the room, she felt herself relax. The music took over, guiding her fingers, shaping the melody. The audience fell silent, listening, and for the first time, she realized the power of her music. It could capture attention, evoke feelings, and tell a story without words. She poured her heart into the song, every note reflecting her love, her struggles, and her determination. By the time she finished, the room was quiet for a moment, and then a soft round of applause began, growing louder as more people joined in. Some classmates who had doubted her before looked surprised, even a little ashamed. The teachers, too, seemed genuinely impressed. After the show, she felt a mixture of relief and pride. She had faced the fear of performing in front of others and had succeeded. The ridicule and doubt that had haunted her seemed smaller now, less powerful. She realized that the opinions of others could not define her worth or her talent. What mattered was her dedication and love for music. She carried that lesson with her, knowing that every challenge she faced was an opportunity to grow stronger. Her journey did not stop at the talent show. In fact, it sparked a new phase in her life. She sought out more opportunities to play, joining small community events and practicing new and more difficult pieces. Each performance, no matter how small, taught her something new. She learned to focus under pressure, to listen carefully, and to connect with her audience. She discovered that music was not just about playing the right notes, but about expressing emotion and telling a story through sound. Along the way, she met others who shared her passion. A few students who had initially teased her began to show interest, asking her for tips or admiring her skill. Even her family began to see her dedication differently. They noticed the joy and confidence that music brought her, and slowly, they became her supporters. It was not a sudden change, but a gradual shift in perception. Her persistence and talent could not be ignored, and the people around her started to understand that the piano was more than a hobby. It was a calling. Through all of this, she faced moments of doubt. Some days, the practice felt exhausting, and mistakes seemed overwhelming. But she always returned to the piano, drawn by the love for the sound, the way it made her feel alive, and the dreams it inspired. Each challenge became a test of her commitment, and each success, no matter how small, reinforced her belief in herself. She realized that ridicule and doubt were part of the journey, not the end of it. They were obstacles to overcome, not signs to quit. Her story of perseverance began to take shape quietly, in her small daily victories and private moments of triumph. She learned to value her own opinion above the criticism of others. She discovered that true growth came from within, from dedication, practice, and the courage to follow her heart. The piano became more than an instrument. It became a teacher, a companion, and a mirror reflecting her determination and dreams. By the end of this period, she had grown both as a musician and as a person. She was no longer just the girl who practiced in secret, afraid of what others thought. She had begun to step into her own light, finding confidence in her abilities and joy in her music. The ridicule that once seemed so powerful now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the thrill of discovery and the satisfaction of achieving something through hard work. She had faced the challenges of mockery and doubt and emerged stronger, ready to take the next steps on her journey. Through all of this, one thing remained clear. Her love for the piano was unshakable. Every note she played carried her passion, her struggles, and her dreams. She had found her voice through music, and nothing could take that away from her. The path ahead was still full of challenges, but she knew she had the strength to face them. The spark that had first drawn her to the piano had grown into a flame, burning brighter with each day, guiding her toward a future shaped by talent, perseverance, and an unwavering love for music. The excitement of the talent show had given her a new sense of confidence, but it also brought new challenges. She wanted to grow, to learn more, to push her skills further than she ever had before. There were bigger recitals coming up, ones that required more skill, more practice, and more courage. She knew that this was the next step in her journey, but she also knew it would not be easy. The pressure to perform well in front of a larger audience made her nervous, but it also made her more determined than ever. Her days became filled with longer practice sessions. She learned to approach the piano differently, not just playing the notes but thinking about the feeling behind each song. She studied recordings of professional pianists, paying attention to their timing, the softness or strength of each note, and the way they expressed emotion through music. She wanted to bring that same depth to her playing, to make her music more than just sounds and more like a story that people could feel. Some of the songs were incredibly difficult, demanding more precision and skill than she had ever attempted. She struggled at times, hitting wrong notes or losing the rhythm, but she refused to give up. The ridicule from peers had not disappeared entirely. Some classmates still whispered or rolled their eyes when they saw her practicing, and a few teachers continued to question whether music was a serious path for her. But by now, she had learned to block out their words. She focused on her music, on the joy it brought her, and on the dreams she was building. Each criticism became fuel for her determination. She wanted to show everyone that dedication, practice, and passion could transform a hobby into something real and beautiful. She found inspiration in small moments. A sunny afternoon would find her at the piano, fingers moving across the keys as a bird sang outside the window. Or she would hear a melody in a song on the radio and try to recreate it on the piano, feeling the music flow from her mind into her hands. Every small success, every moment of clarity and mastery, gave her more confidence. She began to see that music was not just something to do. It was something that could define her, shape her, and guide her life. The upcoming recital was at a community hall, larger than the school auditorium she had performed in before. The thought of performing in front of a bigger crowd both thrilled and terrified her. She imagined the faces of strangers, the eyes watching her every move, and the silence that would hang in the air as she began to play. She practiced relentlessly, sometimes until her fingers ached, until her eyes were tired, until the music became second nature. She knew that preparation was the key, and that the harder she worked, the more confident she would feel. As the day of the recital drew near, she felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She tried to imagine the music in her mind, rehearsing the song over and over again, not just the notes but the emotion behind each chord. Her family, who had started to appreciate her dedication, offered encouragement, reminding her to enjoy the moment and to trust herself. She took their words to heart, But deep down, she knew that this performance was hers alone. It was a test of her own courage, skill, and love for the music. The night of the recital arrived. The hall was buzzing with energy, filled with families, friends, and community members. The stage was set, and the grand piano gleamed under the lights. She waited backstage, watching other performers, some confident, some nervous like herself. Her stomach was tight with nerves, but she reminded herself of all the practice, all the hours she had spent mastering her music. She told herself that she was ready. When her turn came, she walked onto the stage, her heart pounding. She sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. The first note rang out, clear and steady, and she felt a calmness wash over her. The music took over, guiding her hands, shaping the melody, and carrying her through the song. She could feel the audience listening, some leaning forward, some closing their eyes, completely absorbed. The whispers of doubt from before seemed far away, replaced by the connection she felt with every person in the room through her music as the song continued. She lost herself in the rhythm and emotion. The piano became an extension of her own voice, expressing feelings she could not put into words. Each note carried a piece of her heart. Each chord told a part of her story. The audience responded in kind, their attention fixed on her, their reactions subtle but powerful. She noticed the nods, the small smiles, and the quiet gasps of appreciation. The music had the power to move them, to touch something deep inside. When the final note faded, there was a pause, a moment of silence that felt almost sacred. Then the applause began, soft at first, and then growing louder and louder. She looked up, seeing the expressions of surprise, admiration, and even awe on the faces of people who had doubted her. Some classmates, who had once mocked her, now watched with respect. Teachers who had questioned her path smiled proudly. The feeling of accomplishment, of having shared a piece of herself and being understood, was overwhelming. She had transformed fear into courage, practice into performance, and passion into something tangible. After the recital, people came to talk to her, congratulating her, asking how long she had practiced and what inspired her. It was a new experience, hearing praise and curiosity from strangers, realizing that her music could impact people beyond her small circle. She felt proud, not just for playing well, but for standing firm in her dream despite the challenges she had faced. The performance had become a turning point, a moment when her hobby began to feel like a real, serious part of her life. The months following the recital were filled with new opportunities and experiences. She was invited to play at local events, small gatherings, and community programs. Each performance taught her something new about connecting with people, about expressing emotion, and about pushing herself beyond what she thought possible. She continued to practice diligently, always seeking to improve, to explore new songs, and to challenge her skills. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a teacher, and a source of endless inspiration. Through all of this, she faced setbacks too. Some performances did not go as planned, and mistakes sometimes occurred despite her best efforts. But she learned to see these moments as part of the journey, not failures. Each challenge was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to become better. She realized that the path of pursuing a dream was never easy, but the rewards, the joy, the pride, the connection with others, made it worthwhile. Her story also began to inspire others. Younger students at school started asking her for tips and advice, admiring her dedication and skill. Some teachers began to encourage her more openly, recognizing her talent and determination. Even her family, who had once seen music as just a hobby, now celebrated her achievements and supported her pursuit of excellence. The recognition, small as it was, became a reminder that hard work, passion, and persistence could change the perception of others and create opportunities where none seemed to exist. In these days of growth and discovery, she learned valuable lessons about courage, perseverance, and the importance of believing in oneself. She understood that fear and doubt were natural, but they could be overcome through dedication and love for what you do. She also realized that true success was not just about applause or recognition, but about the fulfillment that comes from expressing oneself fully and honestly. The piano had given her that gift, and she cherished it more than anything. By the end of this period, she had grown significantly, not just as a pianist but as a person. She had faced the fear of performing, overcome ridicule, and discovered the power of her own dedication. Her dream had become clearer, more tangible, and more important to her than ever. The challenges she faced had strengthened her resolve, and the successes had given her the confidence to aim even higher. The journey was far from over, but she was ready to continue, knowing that her music had the ability to touch hearts and change lives. The spark of passion that had begun in her childhood had grown into a steady flame. It was no longer a secret hobby or a private dream. It was becoming a calling, a purpose, and a source of joy and inspiration. With each performance, she learned more about herself, about the music, and about the world around her. The road ahead would have obstacles, but she was prepared, determined, and excited to see where her talent and dedication could take her. Every note she played brought her closer to her dream, and she embraced the journey with courage, hope, and unwavering love for the piano. The day of the community recital had arrived, and she could feel the excitement mixed with nerves deep in her chest. The hall was larger than any place she had performed before, with rows of seats stretching farther than her eyes could see and bright lights focused on the stage. Behind the curtains, she took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. She could hear the faint hum of the audience as they settled in, the murmurs of conversation, the shifting of feet, and the occasional cough. Each sound reminded her of the importance of this moment, and yet also gave her a strange sense of anticipation. This was the chance she had been preparing for, the moment when her music could truly reach others. She glanced at the grand piano on the stage, its polished surface gleaming under the lights. The sight of it made her feel both awed and comforted. She had spent countless hours practicing, imagining herself at this very moment, and now it was real. The other performers were finishing their acts, some receiving polite applause, some proud smiles. She knew that when her turn came, all eyes would be on her. The thought made her stomach twist, but also filled her with determination. She had worked too hard to let fear take over now. Finally, it was her turn. She walked to the piano, each step measured and steady, feeling the weight of expectation but also the surge of excitement. As she sat down, she took another deep breath and placed her hands on the keys. For a brief moment, she paused, feeling the cool surface beneath her fingers and letting the silence wash over her. Then she began to play. The first note resonated through the hall, clear and strong, and she felt a wave of calm wash over her. The music began to flow, each note carrying her emotions, each chord telling a part of her story. As she played, she became completely absorbed in the music. The audience seemed to disappear, replaced by the world she created with her hands. She felt every rise and fall of the melody, every subtle change in rhythm, every quiet pause that added meaning to the piece. The song was not just notes on a page anymore. It was a living expression of her heart and mind. She could hear the audience breathing with her, sensing the emotion, feeling the story she was telling without words. It was a connection she had never experienced so fully before, and it thrilled her. Her nerves melted away as the performance continued. The complicated passages she had feared so much came naturally, her fingers moving with confidence and precision. Each note seemed to respond to her thoughts, as if the piano itself understood what she wanted to express. She felt a deep sense of freedom, a release of all the doubt and fear that had once held her back. In that moment, nothing else mattered except the music and the way it carried her. The audience's reaction grew as the song progressed. She could sense the shifting energy in the room, the quiet awe, the focus of people leaning forward, captivated by the music. Some faces showed surprise, others admiration, and a few were visibly moved. She had always hoped that her music could touch others, but experiencing it in real time was far more powerful than she had imagined. She realized that the piano was more than an instrument. It was a bridge, connecting her emotions to those around her in a way that words could not. The climax of the piece approached, and she poured everything into the final notes. Her heart raced, her fingers moved quickly yet gracefully, and the music soared. When the last chord echoed through the hall, there was a moment of silence so complete that it felt almost sacred. She held her hands above the keys, feeling the lingering vibrations, and then the applause erupted. It started softly, then grew louder and louder, filling the hall with a wave of sound that made her chest ache with joy. People were standing, clapping, cheering, and even some were wiping away tears. The impact of her performance was more than she had ever imagined, and a warm glow of pride and happiness spread through her. After stepping away from the piano, she felt a mix of relief, pride, and awe. She had faced her fear, shared her music with a large audience, and left a lasting impression. The whispers of doubt from the past seemed distant and meaningless now. Her classmates who had once mocked her looked at her differently, some with admiration, others with surprise. Teachers who had questioned her dedication approached with smiles, congratulating her on her skill and poise. The feeling of validation, though not the primary goal, was undeniably satisfying. She had proven to herself, more than anyone else, that her passion and hard work could create something extraordinary. In the days following the recital, the impact of her performance became more apparent. People from the community approached her, asking about her practice routine, complimenting her talent, and expressing how moved they had been by the music. Some younger students asked for guidance, wanting to learn and play like her. The encouragement and recognition reinforced her belief in the value of her dedication. It was no longer enough to play for herself alone. She realized that her music could inspire, comfort, and bring joy to others, and that thought excited her deeply. She also reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The ridicule, the doubt, the hours of practice, the small triumphs and setbacks. All of it had contributed to the strength and confidence she now felt. She understood that challenges were not obstacles meant to stop her but tests to prepare her for moments like this. Each moment of doubt she had faced had taught her resilience, patience, and the importance of believing in herself. The performance was a reward for her perseverance, a confirmation that her passion was real and powerful. With this newfound confidence, she began to dream bigger. The community recital had shown her that she could reach people with her music and that her efforts were meaningful. She started to explore more challenging pieces, expanding her skills and experimenting with different styles. She imagined future performances, larger audiences, and even the possibility of inspiring others to pursue their passions despite doubt and ridicule. The piano was no longer just a part of her life. It had become a central force guiding her choices, shaping her goals, and giving her purpose. Her family, too, began to see her in a new light. They noticed the maturity, focus, and joy that music brought her and began to support her more openly. They attended her practices, helped her find opportunities to perform, and encouraged her to continue developing her talent. Their support, combined with her own dedication, created a nurturing environment that allowed her to grow even further. She realized that while talent was important, the encouragement and belief of others could strengthen her journey and amplify her success. Through it all, she remained humble and focused. She knew that one performance, no matter how impactful, was not the end of the journey. There were still challenges ahead, new pieces to master, and new audiences to reach. She approached each day with a sense of purpose, dedicating herself to practice, improvement, and exploration. She embraced the small moments of progress as much as the big achievements, understanding that growth was a gradual process that required patience and persistence. The experience of that performance also deepened her connection to the piano itself. She had always loved the instrument, but now she felt a profound respect for it. The piano was not just a tool for making music. It was a partner in her journey, a medium through which she could express herself fully and connect with others. She began to notice subtleties she had overlooked before. The feel of the keys under her fingers, the resonance of different notes, the way timing and expression could transform a song. This attention to detail elevated her playing, allowing her to bring even more depth and emotion to her performances. As she looked forward, she understood that her path would not always be easy. There would be moments of self-doubt, challenges from others, and obstacles to overcome. But she also knew that she had discovered something irreplaceable: the power of music to express, connect, and transform. She had learned that dedication, passion, and perseverance could overcome ridicule and doubt. She had experienced the joy of creating something beautiful and sharing it with others. And she had seen, firsthand, how one song could touch hearts and leave a lasting impact. By the end of this stage of her journey, she had grown not just as a pianist but as a person. She had faced fear, triumphed over doubt, and experienced the profound connection that music could create. The spark of passion that had begun in her childhood had become a steady flame, burning brighter with each practice, each performance, and each new challenge. She was ready to continue her journey, to explore new possibilities, and to share her gift with the world, knowing that the power of music was limitless and that her dedication could truly change lives. After the powerful recital, her life began to change in ways she had only dreamed about. People she didn't even know came up to her, congratulating her, expressing admiration, and asking how she had learned to play with such emotion and skill. Each compliment warmed her heart, but more importantly, it reminded her that her music could touch others in ways that words could not. She felt a deep sense of responsibility now, knowing that her piano could bring joy, comfort, or inspiration to people who needed it. She realized that her dream was no longer private. It had a real impact on the world around her. She continued to practice every day, more focused than ever. Her fingers glided over the keys with confidence, her mind immersed in the music, exploring new melodies and harmonies. The small notebook where she had once scribbled her first compositions now contained intricate pieces that she crafted herself. Each song she wrote was a reflection of her experiences, her feelings, and the lessons she had learned through her journey. She began to see music not just as something she played, but as a language she could use to express her deepest thoughts and connect with others. As she performed at more local events, she noticed that her music could change the mood of a room. People would come in tired or distracted and leave smiling or moved by the emotions she conveyed. She realized that this was the true power of her passion. It was not just about applause or recognition. It was about creating a moment, a memory, an experience that could stay with someone long after the music ended. This understanding deepened her love for the piano and fueled her determination to keep improving. Her family, once unsure about the seriousness of her dream, had become her biggest supporters. They attended her performances, encouraged her practice sessions, and celebrated her achievements. Their support was no longer just polite acknowledgement but genuine pride and joy. It was heartening for her to see their eyes light up when she played, to hear their praise without reservation. The shift in their perception was significant, and it made her appreciate how persistence and dedication could change the minds of those closest to you. School life continued alongside her musical journey. She found that her confidence from performing translated into other areas. She spoke up more in class, helped her peers, and approached challenges with a determination she had not possessed before. Music had taught her discipline, focus, and patience, skills that were useful beyond the piano. She also noticed that her relationships with classmates improved. Some who had once mocked her now sought her advice, while others expressed genuine admiration. She had become someone they respected, not because she demanded it, but because her actions and talent naturally earned it. One day, she received an invitation to participate in a regional music competition. It was a bigger stage with more experienced performers and a wider audience. The thought of competing made her nervous, but it also excited her. She remembered the first times she had faced ridicule and doubt and realized how far she had come. She decided to approach the competition with the same focus and determination that had guided her since the beginning. It was not about winning but about showing herself how much she had grown and how far her music could reach. Preparation for the competition was intense. She spent hours refining her technique, perfecting the flow of her compositions, and practicing her stage presence. Each day, she noticed improvements in her playing, subtle changes in her expression and control. She also experimented with new styles and pieces, expanding her musical vocabulary. The piano had become a partner in her growth, challenging her, teaching her, and inspiring her creativity. With each practice session, her confidence grew, and the anxiety about performing began to transform into excitement. When the day of the competition arrived, she felt a familiar mix of nerves and anticipation. The hall was grander, the audience larger, and the stakes higher than ever before. As she walked onto the stage and sat at the piano, she took a deep breath, letting the moment settle over her. Then she began to play. The music flowed naturally, every note conveying her dedication, emotion, and artistry. She felt the audience responding, the energy of the room lifting her performance, pushing her to play with even more passion and clarity. The judges listened intently, their expressions unreadable at first. She focused on the music, not on the outcome, and allowed herself to be fully present in the moment. The performance reached its climax, her emotions pouring through the keys, creating a tapestry of sound that resonated throughout the hall. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, followed by overwhelming applause. People were standing, cheering, and some were visibly moved. She felt a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. The years of practice, doubt, ridicule, and persistence had culminated in this experience. Her dream had become real, and it had the power to touch many lives. After the competition, she reflected on how far she had come. From the little girl who played in secret, dismissed by classmates and family alike, to a confident performer recognized and admired by many, her journey had been filled with challenges and triumphs. She realized that the ridicule she once faced had not been an obstacle but a lesson in resilience. It had taught her to trust herself, to work diligently, and to never let the doubts of others define her worth. She also understood the importance of sharing her journey with others. She began mentoring younger students who were interested in music, encouraging them to follow their dreams despite obstacles. She shared her own experiences of doubt, ridicule, and perseverance, hoping that they could learn from her journey. Watching these students develop their own skills and confidence gave her a sense of fulfillment beyond her personal achievements. She realized that the impact of her passion could extend far beyond herself, inspiring others to pursue what they loved. Over time, she continued to grow as a musician and as a person. She explored new genres, composed original pieces, and performed in more venues. Each new experience taught her something valuable about technique, expression, audience connection, and most importantly, about herself. She became more resilient, more self-assured, and more aware of the influence her music could have on others. Her piano had become not just an instrument, but a voice through which she could communicate, inspire, and heal. Her journey also brought her a deeper understanding of the value of persistence and dedication. The path from ridicule to recognition had not been easy, but it had been worthwhile. She learned that true success is not measured solely by applause or accolades, but by the growth, joy, and fulfillment that come from following one's passion with sincerity and effort. The music she played carried her story, her struggles, and her triumphs, and in doing so, it left a lasting impact on those who listened. Looking back, she could see the moments that had defined her path. The first time she touched the piano, the small recitals, the whispers of doubt, and the encouragement of those who believed in her. Each of these moments had contributed to her growth, shaping her into the confident and passionate musician she had become. The piano had been her companion, teacher, and friend throughout the journey, and she knew that it would continue to guide her as she pursued even greater dreams. In the end, she realized that her story was not just about playing the piano or achieving recognition. It was about courage, perseverance, and the transformative power of passion. She had faced ridicule, doubt, and challenges, yet she had stayed true to herself and her love for music. Her journey demonstrated that following one's dreams, no matter how small or dismissed by others, could lead to extraordinary outcomes. The music she created had the power to change lives, including her own, and that knowledge filled her with a deep and lasting sense of purpose. Her life continued, filled with performances, compositions, and the joy of inspiring others. The piano remained a constant companion, a source of comfort, expression, and connection. She continued to explore, to learn, and to share her music, understanding that every note played was a chance to touch hearts, evoke emotions, and create memories. The spark that had begun in her childhood had grown into a brilliant flame, illuminating not only her own path, but also inspiring those who listened to her music. And through it all, she knew that the journey, with its challenges and triumphs, had been worth every moment.